Now, we will also move over to Simon Pratt, lecturer of political science at the University of Melbourne, for more on this. Simon, what do you make of these reports of explosion in Iran?
Well, my first message is don't panic. And my second message is don't jump to conclusions. Early information suggests that this was a fairly limited strike. It was not against any of the sensitive nuclear facilities or religious sites in Isfahan. It appears to have been directed at a military airfield just to the north of the city. And I haven't yet seen any damage reports or footage to suggest whether many of whatever Israel fired at Iran touched the ground or caused an impact. Iran is saying that the only explosions are due to its air defense system, and Israel has said that this was launched using unmanned aerial vehicles. But there also appear to have been strikes against some sites in Syria and possibly Iraq. So I think this is the awaited and much discussed and much deliberated Israeli retaliation, and it seems to be sort of a step down the escalation ladder. I know it may be strange to think of a retaliation as a form of de-escalation, and certainly I think the Americans would have been happier had Israel done nothing at all, and that was what they were leading on Israel to do. But this isn't anything like, say, a strike on Iranian nuclear facilities or anything like the opening blow of a much larger conflagration. That's my interpretation.
Well, Simon, White House nor the Pentagon has commented anything right now, but if confirmed, how will the Biden administration react to any sort of potential attacks on Israel, from Israel rather?
Well, the Biden administration leaned on Netanyahu hard not to retaliate harshly or strongly to the attack. And part of that message that they sent was, Israel, if you do this, you will do it on your own, and you will suffer the consequences of your retaliation largely on your own. That said, it's hard to imagine the U.S. abandoning Israel entirely should Iran respond especially harshly. We know from the 300 odd projectiles that Iran launched at Israel on Saturday, we know that there can be a pretty significant coordinated regional defense strategy that can thin out or disarm, shall we say, most of any sort of standoff attack that Iran could launch on Israel. And so if they try that again, I imagine we'll see some degree of American and regional support and defense. But it does look like the U.S. is not entirely on board with whatever Israel is doing. There were reports I've seen, they were notified a day and a half ago or thereabouts, and they were reassured that it would not be against any nuclear facility.
Well, then, what comes next for the region in the face of these escalating tensions, Simon?
I would not want to take any guesses as to what comes next. What I would just say is I want to reiterate that I don't think anyone should panic. I don't think we're on the eve of World War III. I think that we're watching a very careful, delicate, controlled dance of deterrence and saber-rattling. And here we see that violence and military attacks are used very performatively. So things could get out of control or things could die down. I don't know which is which. And I don't think anybody else does either. So I would be a little wary of anyone who thinks that they can tell you what happens next.
Well, then, Simon, one question. Do you see any of Iran's allies joining in to support the country?
Well, we can differentiate here between Iran's allies, which might include Russia and China to a large degree, and Iranian proxies, which would include Hezbollah or the Yemeni Houthi movement or certain factions in Iraq. So we can expect that those proxies will respond, and indeed their response is ongoing. And I would direct viewer attention to the ongoing exchanges of drones and airstrikes in the south of Lebanon and the north of Israel. Right, but I don't see Russia or China intervening here because, again, Israel's attack appears to have been extremely limited and very carefully and calculatedly so.
Well, then this brings us to the question of, vetoing. U.S. has vetoed, but you see that 12 members have supported this. And prior to this, in 2011, Palestine was not included and rather failed the bid itself, citing not meeting the required support. There is more support right now. What does this say? What do you make of all these new updates here?
So we're moving now to the recent UN Security Council vote on a resolution to grant full membership status in the UN to Palestine as a state. And 12 members voted yes, including states that do not individually recognize Palestine as a state. We have a couple abstentions, the UK and Switzerland, and we have a US veto. And the US's policy has long been that a two-state solution is necessary, but that recognition for Palestine as a state must be the outcome of a negotiated settlement. And they have always been against Palestine seeking to bypass Israel and receive recognition via the international community. And so they have vetoed the resolution because that is what Palestine has done here. That said, I think that the number of states that voted yes is very significant, and it tells you that the international community is increasingly on board with bypassing Israel and with granting recognition to Palestine. And so we'll see how much longer U.S. resistance to this continues, and we'll see whether the strong message that other member states have sent on the Security Council, whether Israel hears that and whether that has an effect on how Israel moves forward diplomatically and in relation to the Palestine Authority.
Simon, thank you so much for joining us. That was Simon Pratt, lecturer of political science at the University of Melbourne.